Hello, everybody. This is the first lecture for APES, and we will have numerous lectures online on our APES 2015-2016 playlist at mdraves100 on YouTube. And I plan on doing a lot of these this year. We have a new textbook that we're going to be getting, and I don't think we're going to have it uh, by the first week of school, so I wanted to go ahead and start doing this. One of the reasons why I like to do online lectures is it provides more class time to do activities, labs, even go out on our bikes over to Lake Abram and do fun things other than just sitting and listening to a lecture while you're in school. So they call that a flipped classroom, where the instructor literally like flips what you do. So instead of having lecture during the school day, you'll have it at night. And so you'll be responsible for taking notes on all of these lectures in your composition book that you guys have gotten. And it'll, like I said in class and explaining the composition book, the right side of the page is the input. So that's where you're going to put all these notes that you're going to get here in this lecture and in class if we have lecture. And then on the left side is your output, which is your interpretation of that information. And that'll be part of your homework grade, is me checking actually your left side, especially to see how you are interpreting the information. So our new book is Environmental Science for AP, and Chapter 1 is all about environmental science. And so if you don't know what it is, it's basically an interdisciplinary science that encompasses many different areas like biology, ecology, geology, chemistry, physics, um, government, law, all these different things wrapped into one course. So you could almost guarantee that you're going to do well in this class because you've heard of all of the things before, like in the news, or you've read it in newspapers. Things like fracking. You know, fracking is a really big thing here in Ohio. You may have heard of global climate change, habitat destruction, human population problems, um, just general stuff about how matter cycles through the earth. And so you've probably heard of all those things before. And so AP Environmental just goes into a deeper level of understanding of those things and how humans impact and what we can do to make things better. So I'm really excited to start that out. So the chapter 1 actually goes over fracking. Um, Fracking, basically what they do with fracking, and I'll write that down and you guys jot this down. This is in reference to chapter 1. Sorry, I'm just a little, I need to practice more at this. Fracking is when they literally will take, in order to get gas out of the earth, or oil and gas extraction, in order for them to get that out of the earth, they have developed a type of process called hydraulic fracturing, which is fracking. And what they do is they use high pressure fluids. Wow, this is so they use high pressure fluids, which are, it's water basically, and also many other types of chemicals. And they use that high pressure to go into the ground. So let's say here is our oil and gas. They will drill down into this, and in order to get this back up, they have to inject under very high pressure and temperature water and other types of chemicals. Now, the problem with fracking is that those chemicals that they use are toxic, and we all know that in the ground, um, there's this stuff called groundwater, okay, that surrounds these areas, and the groundwater actually moves too. So as this groundwater moves through, it will collect with it those toxic chemicals. And then let's say about 2 miles down the road, there's a house with a family and they get their water from the ground, and that's well water. They use that water. Those chemicals could possibly be in their groundwater. And you may have seen, like on the cover of Time magazine, there was a picture of a family in Pennsylvania that they they had their faucet on, and then they took a flame to the water in the faucet, and it was on fire. And so that was kind of like a hook into what the effects of fracking are. Um, so there's been a lot of advances in technology, and fracking is one of them in order for mining companies to gain access to oil and gas. Um, they then on page one is where you guys will actually see this in your textbook. So that's one thing. That's called fracking. It's totally relevant to what's happening today. We've already talked about environmental science and how it's interdisciplinary. Um, and so it's a field really that looks at how humans impact and the human role in the state of the earth today. And really looking for solutions and identifying ways that we have altered the environment and how we continue to alter the environment and then make it better. And when we look at the ecosystem, when we look at the earth is made up of living and non-living things. So you may have heard of these terms before, abiotic and biotic. Um, abiotic is non-living components, so things like the sun, the actual soil, not the living things in the soil, nutrients, water. Okay, those are different things. pH, temperature, those are all abiotic factors in ecosystems. And then the biotic factors are the living things. And so what environmental science attempts to understand is how these two interact with each other and then how we impact those interactions and identify ways in which definitely identify what we're doing wrong, but also identify solutions to fix those problems. And there are different areas in environmental science, like environmental studies, which pretty much looks at all of the topics in environmental science, specifically environmental policy. So these are laws that are in place or laws that they're trying to actually enact. Um, so they look at environmental policy, environmental economics, literature, and ethics. And that's environmental studies. So there's actually some majors in colleges. You can get a major in environmental science, but you could also get a major in environmental studies. And so that's a big field because more and more cities and municipalities are looking to be what we call more sustainable. You may have heard of that word before. Sustainable and sustainability. And that basically is when you have approaches in every decision, economically, environmentally, that are decisions that are for the better. So you're leaving the environment better than when you got it. So you're not exhausting resources. You're actually making decisions that um, are renewable. Okay, so it's something that's not damaging. And so a lot of municipalities are hiring sustainability administrators that where they would work for the city and they would tackle the environmental problems in the city with sustainable choices. Okay, so like for example, I don't know if you heard, but there is a wind farm that they're going to be putting in Lake Erie. And this wind farm is going to be a bunch of turbines, I think like 6 to 8 turbines that they're going to have in the prevailing wind that comes from the northwest across the lake. And so that is a renewable energy source, and it would power pretty much all of Cuyahoga County. They said like 300,000 homes, which it might be around there. Um, so, that is a sustainable choice. So let's say that there was oil and gas that they found in the bedrock of Cuyahoga County. So instead of fracking, then they would choose a more sustainable renewable source like a wind farm. We will be getting into these alternative forms of energy later in the year. And obviously there are pros and cons to everything. And so we'll get into that in greater detail as the year progresses. Um, so, um, an environmentalist, on the other hand, is a person who actually participates in environmentalism. It's somewhat of a social movement that seeks to protect the environment. So environmentalists will actually lobby in DC. They're lobbyists, they're activists, and there's also environmentalists that are educators. And it really is a movement. It's really grown a lot since the start of this class. Um, so it's a great area because it's just continuously growing. So when we talk about how humans impact these areas, um, what we see is that we manipulate the natural environment for our own gain. And we manipulate the environment in ways that really are destructive. And so an example of this would be like converting farmland, converting wetlands. Okay, wetlands are, if you don't know what a wetland is, it's basically an area on land that is a little bit of water, a little bit of land. That's why they call it a wetland. And wetlands act like sponges on the earth because they will absorb just tons of water. So wetlands are really important in areas that flood because it would reduce the effects of flooding if you have more wetland. And so the perfect example is over at Lake Abram, and we'll be going there on our bikes many times. And Lake Abram, you guys, is about just over 80 acres of wetland, and it's the largest remaining wetland in Cuyahoga County. So it's a gem in the middle of this industrial um, city, and it actually encompasses three cities, Brook Park, Middleburg Heights, and Berea, which is kind of neat because that's our district. And so this lake is actually there. It used to be larger, but as a result of a process called eutrophication, it has filled in over time. Okay, eutrophication is the aging of a lake. So lakes will start out really big, and then over time they will, fill in with sediments, and that's a natural process where, sediments will fill in, and it'll get shallower and shallower and shallower, and then therefore there might be just this much lake left. So that's a natural process. Um, so eventually, quite honestly, Lake Erie, all the Great Lakes will be filled in over time. Millions of years probably, but it'll be filled in over time and turned back into land. Um, the problem is that this is a way that we've manipulated the environment because of our land use practices. This has actually sped up. And I want you to answer this question in your composition book. How do you think we have sped up the aging of a lake? And go ahead and try to answer that. And we'll talk about that. And we call that the speeding up of the aging of a lake cultural eutrophication. Okay, cultural eutrophication. So Lake Abram would probably be larger if we used our land differently over the past 100 years of developing the area around it. So think about that and think about, how we've sped that up. Um, so these wetlands that surround the lake, okay, it doesn't just immediately turn into forest, it actually is like wetlands. And so you may have seen these like plants, they're called cattails. They look like little hot dogs on the end. That's a significant indication that it's a wetland. Um, we have manipulated these wetlands over time, we've converted them into farmland. So another question I want you to answer is, why are we choosing wetlands for farmland? Okay, and so we'll discuss that in greater detail in class. Okay, I'm going to stop right now because that is the end of Module 1 in Chapter 1, which you guys will have to read anyway, but it's all about environmental science. Like I said, it defines what it is and how we have altered the natural systems. Okay, so that's just a quick little review of Module 1 and Chapter 1, pages 1 to 6. Okay, and then what I would like you to do is answer the Module 1 questions. They are on page 6 in the textbook, and you will be answering these in your composition book, okay? And there's only 4 questions, and you'll answer those in your composition book, and we'll check and go over those at another time, okay? All right, that's the end of this.